Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. It's time to take your questions once again, and they're all coming from Twitter this week. First one is from John V, who asks, what are your thoughts on the Renters' Bill of Rights that Trudeau just announced that will be in the next budget? Federal jurisdiction or provincial jurisdiction? 100% provincial jurisdiction. And the PMO actually acknowledges this. In the official press release that came out with the announcement, it says right here, developed and implemented in partnership with provinces and territories. So essentially, what this is going to mean is that this will be something that they want to essentially adopt national standards, which means they will have to negotiate this with the provinces, and that's basically about it. The other thing to just kind of think about with this particular announcement is this is kind of the reaction that happens after, if you remember last year when Trudeau said that housing is is largely not a federal responsibility, and everyone lost their goddamn minds over it. Essentially, oh, how dare he say it's not his responsibility? Oh, federal responsibility is whatever people say it is. These kinds of things that all kind of took over the pundit sphere and the media for weeks on end. So when that happens, you get a federal government who's looking to essentially find things that they can do. And this is certainly one of them. And we also have to remember as well, the NDP have been putting out releases over the last number of weeks saying that renters need to be included in the budget and so on. And so once again, this is kind of a feel-good measure that they think that they can try and get some buy-in on. But again, entirely contingent on the provinces. So we'll see if it actually happens. But that's what's happening here. Our next question is from Patricia, who asks, where are those Coronation medals? Good question. I didn't have time to make any official inquiries, given when the question came in. But I do have a theory, and that theory is that this government loves to make announcements based around certain days or events. And my guess is that the plan for these Coronation medals was to make the big announcement during the planned royal tour that was supposed to happen in May. Now, the king is undergoing treatment for cancer and has had to postpone that tour. So I think the government is probably scrambling to find something else that they can make the announcement around. If I were to hazard a guess, possibly Victoria Day, because that is the official birthday of the Sovereign of Canada, not connected to their birthday as a natural person, but that is when we as Canadians celebrate their birthday in an official capacity. So perhaps in lieu of the royal tour, they will announce it somewhere around then. Otherwise, maybe Canada Day. I guess maybe, but yeah, this just kind of goes to one of the particular pathologies of this government is they can't just make an announcement out of the blue. They have to wait for a certain day or event to happen that they can tie it to so that they can try and maximize their impact around it. So that's my guess. I'm going to see if I can make a couple of inquiries around what's happening through some other channels, but for the time being, that's what my guess is. Our last question is from Steve Shaw, who asks, what procedures are in place to ensure committees stick to the topics within their respective mandates? And that's something I am on a tear about lately, let me tell you. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of procedures that don't essentially require MPs to act in good faith. That's one of the particular things that happened when back in the 80s, in the Mulroney era, they really empowered committees to be a lot more self-directing rather than requiring the House of Commons to direct them to do whatever their studies are. And in that regard, that's given chairs a lot more flexibility and leeway. And we're seeing that being abused right now, particularly with, for example, the premier's coming into the Government Operations Committee during their study of the main estimates to have the premiers complain about the rise in the carbon levy, which has absolutely nothing to do with the main estimates. And yet, the chair of that committee, who is a Conservative MP, figured that since the Finance Committee rejected these premiers, even though, again, it would have very little to do with the mandate of the Finance Committee, that he was going to take it upon himself to hear from these premiers. And so far, none of the other members of the Government Operations Committee have challenged the chair for these decisions. And that's really, I guess, one of the real procedural mechanisms is the ability to challenge the chair on these kinds of decisions, and they have not done it in this case. Possibly because other opposition parties are just happy to go along with it. A lot of the times they operate on an ethos of anything that will embarrass the government, they're fine with. So that's kind of why these things happen, particularly in a minority parliament. But unfortunately, yeah, most of those procedural safeguards require MPs to act in good faith. And, to challenge a chair that's abusing his authority. And in this particular case, they have not seen fit to do so. So that's kind of where we're at, unfortunately. It's not great, but unfortunately, this is also kind of what happens when you give them more autonomy to not be so dependent on having the House of Commons direct them to do each individual study, which can be procedurally tiresome and hampers the ability of committees to... Independence on committees is not necessarily a bad thing, but like I was saying right now, this is an abuse of that authority and independence, and so that's why we're seeing this. And that's everything for this week. Thank you for all of your questions. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. It's at journo_Dale on Twitter and journodale __ on Bluesky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.